But it got to the point, Salman, where I was doing this for about 3 years. I was 21 years old. And I realized that the money itself wasn't as exciting to me anymore. Like I had a lot of life problems at this point. I was overweight. I was making a lot of money. I was earning over 6 figures selling phones. Actually, I sold cell phones for Verizon Wireless, but I wasn't happy with my life.
Welcome to Salman Farsi Experience. In this show, we'll be covering everything a new entrepreneur needs to know to set up their business and how you can grow and scale your business in the shortest possible time. If you have a question in mind, go to salmanfarsi.co/ask and submit your question. We might answer it in the next episode. Let's begin our today's episode. Brandon Eastman helps performance-driven leaders break through their limitation, perform at their peak, and achieve their biggest goals. Brandon knows that in the world of full distraction and noise, it's more important than ever to prioritize your own mental and emotional health so that you can truly live an extraordinary life. Today we're going to talk about goal settings, emotional mystery, and a little bit about podcasting since we both are podcasters. Let's start our today's episode. So you're a host of, what's your podcast name?
The Be Better Broadcast.
Great. You're being podcasting now. So I'm in a new podcasting. So how can I make my podcast interesting?
How can you make your podcast interesting?
Yeah. How to make this entertaining? It's like, and first 5 or 7 episodes I record, it was a little bit boring.
So what do you think was boring about it? How do you know that it felt that way?
It was totally on my fault, I would say, because I was like asking questions, nothing else. Straightforward asking them questions. I have prepared 5 to 7 questions. I asked them. That's it. I didn't do anything else for the first few episodes. Another problem was that I listened to you, what you said, but the questions comes in my mind after the podcast is end.
Yes. So a piece of, so first of all, you just started, so you're figuring things out, right? Yeah. So this is a very important stage, and it's a very great question that you just asked. When it comes to what I found works best is I started as well. I had a list of questions that I prepared beforehand, and we jumped right into the questions. And after I would ask a question, I'd say, okay, cool. And then I would move into the next question and then the next, and it became almost like an interrogation versus a conversation. So what really changed things for me was I would ask a question, right? And then after they answer the question, I wait a second to make sure that they're actually done talking. And after they're done talking, I would follow up with something that had value to it that I could add to the conversation. And after I gave like a little piece of value, then I would move to the next question. And then I would add a piece of value and then the next question. So it was more of a conversation than it was an interview. Yeah.
I'm focusing on that. How to make it sounds more like a conversation.
That's it. Make it just act, we're friends at the coffee shop. Right? Just having a conversation. So if I'm talking about goals and I respond to a question that you ask about goals, maybe respond with how you've used that in your own life, because your audience is listening for your guests, but really the people who listen to you are listening for you, not your guests. It's the content, but it's also the host that they're listening for. So they want to know about you too.
Yeah. So let's start our today's topic. So for our listener who don't know about you, tell us a bit about yourself, how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Brandon Eastman with Be Better Industries, and I've been operating Be Better Industries, my business, since 2019. So it's coming on 3 years now that I've been in the personal development space, where I love to work with purpose-driven entrepreneurs. I also love to work with performance-driven leaders inside of companies to help them really make more time for themselves so that they can perform at their peak, but also so that they can spend time with the people that they want to spend time with and on the tasks that bring them joy. So my ultimate goal is I want to reach as many people in a positive way to help them to make positive changes in their life. And right now that's working with leaders and it's working with entrepreneurs, but it all started when I was 18 years old. Okay. I was in the world of sales. I graduated high school, started working for a sales company, and I started to do really well for myself inside of this sales company. And I was making a lot of money. I was a natural salesperson to the point where I dropped out of school actually to pursue sales full time. But it got to the point, Salman, where I was doing this for about 3 years. I was 21 years old. And I realized that the money itself wasn't as exciting to me anymore. Like I had a lot of life problems at this point. I was overweight. I was making a lot of money. I was earning over 6 figures selling phones. Actually, I sold cell phones for Verizon Wireless, but I wasn't happy with my life, right? I was in debt. I was overweight. I didn't want to leave my house. I didn't want to see people. I didn't want them to see who I'd become. And that's what really led me down this journey of personal development and entrepreneurship and really helping other people to make the changes that I was able to make myself.
Okay, so how did you lose your weight?
That's a really good question. So I was right now, just to give everyone a baseline, I'm 190 pounds right now. Okay. I was always someone who struggled with my weight growing up. So from a very young age, probably 6 years old, 6 years old is the last time I was a skinny kid. Okay. Because I come from an Italian family. So there was dinner on the table every single night. We never had to worry about food. And there was an abundance of food available, right? A lot of junk food. There was chips in the cupboard, snacks everywhere. So every day I would just eat and eat and eat. I would drink a ton of milk, and I was always a chubby kid after the age of 6. So I've always had this weird self-image of myself when it comes to weight. So eventually in high school, I was able to actually lose weight temporarily, but I lost weight. I actually found a girlfriend at that time who's now my wife. So, that's probably helped her to be attracted to me in the first place. And once I got into sales though, I gained the weight back. And have you ever been in sales, or have you ever been in an environment where you sit down for a long period of time?
Yeah.
So that's sales, right? You're sitting down, you're behind a desk talking to customers. You have to eat quick. So you're eating fast food, you're eating pizza. It's very easy to gain the weight. Okay. So it got to the point though, where I was so unhappy with myself. I was so unhappy with where I allowed myself to get. I was 260 pounds. All right. So I was 70 pounds heavier than I am now. All right. And I'm a tall guy. I'm not that tall, but I'm 6 foot. So I was big compared to how I am now. And I had very low energy. I didn't feel good about myself. And this leads to the answer to your question that you asked me, how did I lose the weight? Well, I didn't set out to lose weight. I set out to actually become a leader in the sales company that I worked for. And my mentor at the time, he looked at me and he said, Brandon, there's no way in hell you're going to be a leader in this company. And I said, well, why not? And he said, Brandon, how can you expect to help other people if you can't even help yourself? And I was like, wow, that's pretty harsh, right? Yeah. It hit home. It really hurt me. And I said, well, what do I need to do? And he's like, well, I know that you're not happy about how you look. I know that you're insecure of your body. I know that you're insecure of your weight and your health. He's like, if you're really serious about making changes, I want you to read this book. And he handed me a book called The Secret, which we could talk about if you wanted to. And then he said, plus, we've got to get your health in check so you can feel better about yourself. And he says, I invite you to come to the gym with me and work out with me 3 days a week. And I didn't want to work out, dude. I was always someone who prided myself on not having to go to the gym because I thought it was a waste of time. I was like, oh, I don't need to be completely fit and shredded and ripped. But at this point, I had to change something. I didn't know what I had to change. I just knew that I had to do things differently because I was at such a low point of anxiety and constant depression in my life that I knew that there had to be a change. So I started to go to the gym, brother, and I started to work out, and I started to actually watch the foods that I put into my body. And within 6 months of working out, not like 7 days a week, I was working out literally 3 days a week, sometimes 4, while playing basketball, because as a team, we went and played basketball once a week. So it was a lot of running, a lot of moving around. Within 6 months, I lost over 60 pounds in that time. It completely changed my life. And all it took was some movement, some intentional movement, and some watching of what I put into my body. And it wasn't that I was even eating like tons of green salads and fruits and all these things. It was more so watching how much of that food I put into my body. So working out combined with a strategy, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but intermittent fasting, those two things combined helped me to get to where I am now in terms of my health, but also in terms of my energy. Long answer to your question, but that's what my health journey has looked like up until this point.
260 pounds. That's huge.
Literally.
Yeah. What was the role of that book? You mentioned that The Secret book name.
Yeah. So The Secret, I was never someone who read much. All right. So The Secret was one of the first personal development books that I read. And the premise of The Secret, it's a really cheesy book. And a lot of people will read it and they'll think that it's too cheesy to be real. They'll think it's too cheesy to be true. But the premise of the book is your thoughts become things. So whatever you think about, you will attract more of that thing into your life. Okay. So looking back, I was always someone who thought about gossiping, and I was a complainer, and I always thought about what I didn't have. I always thought about how I wanted more, right? I never sat back and thought about the things that I did have in my life. And really what it talks about is your thoughts and your emotions create more of those emotions in your life. It's called the law of attraction. Have you heard of the law of attraction?
Yeah, the law of attraction.
So what you put out, you'll get back. So think of yourself as a magnet, right? So gearing this towards new entrepreneurs, the law of attraction is a very real thing. Because if you're constantly thinking, oh, there's no way I can do that. Oh, I'm not going to be able to create content. I'm not going to be able to make my own podcast. Then you're never going to do it because you're thinking those thoughts in your mind, which is going to attract that same exact result that you're looking for. But instead, if you focus on what you do want to happen, I want to start a podcast. I want to bring on 5 clients. I want to create a new offer. I want to create a new product for my lineup. If you start to think about what you want, then you'll start to notice people and places and circumstances that will make that a reality, right? Like, have you ever bought a new car?
No.
Have you ever bought a car in general?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, for those who have, it applies to anything. So when you buy a car, right? And maybe you'll buy a car one day and you'll know how this feels, right? So when you buy a car,
I'm planning to buy a car.
Yeah, well, here you go. Now you're going to see everything. You're going to see what I'm talking about here. So right now, actually, I want to use this as an example with you. So right now, think in your mind of the kind of car that you want. Okay, think in your mind of the kind of car that you'd love to see yourself driving around in. All right, whether it's a luxury car or whether it's just any car that will do the job and get you around town. Okay, what's going to happen, Salman, is you're going to think of this car and guess what you're going to start seeing around town everywhere you go. You're going to see this car and you're going to see it in the color that you imagined in your mind. Because the thing is, the car that you want is already out there on the roads. People are already driving it. People are already out there buying it and using it. But you haven't seen it until you decided that that's what you want for yourself. You have to tell your brain what it is you're looking for. And the way that this goes back to the law of attraction is when you're telling your brain what you want to look for, your brain's going to find that in your external reality. It sounds woo-woo. It sounds crazy, but the reality is what you seek, you will find. What you're looking for, you will notice more of it. So if you want more clients, ask yourself, who is the ideal client you want to work with? Know exactly what this kind of person's all about, right? What do they do for work right now? How do you want to help them? Where are the places that they hang out? You start thinking of these things, and then you start finding all of those different people that can help you to do that can become a client. As an example with you started your podcast recently, right? You have a certain idea of the kind of guest that you want to have on this podcast. And you showed up in my inbox saying, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast, right? You're not just having any old person on your show. You're looking for the right person. And the law of attraction has worked in the way of it has brought me to you to be interviewed for your podcast. It's the same thing for any area of life.
Absolutely. Know your target audience first. That's the thing.
Yeah. You got to know who you're looking for.
So that interests me to our today's conversation topic. How can I set my goals?
That's a great question, brother. Now, when you talk about goals, I like to make it simple. I'm all about simple. I'm all about making things easy. So when I think about goals, I think about goals, and then I think about a vision. All right. And some people call these short-term goals and long-term goals. I don't call them long-term goals. I call them the way that you want your life to look like in 3 to 5 years. I don't generally go past 3 to 5 years because if you think about your life 10 years ago, would you ever have imagined that you'd be exactly where you are right now 10 years ago?
No.
No, you would never be able to tell. I actually just had a memory pop up on my Facebook. 10 years ago, I was a senior in high school. I was a senior in high school. I never could have imagined that I'd be operating my own business, helping people, being on podcasts, reaching people globally. Never could have imagined. But what you can imagine is where you'll be in 3 years from now. And this is very important because this is designing your life on purpose. So for everyone listening right now, I want you to ask yourself the question, if you could have any reality that you wanted in the next 3 to 5 years, what would that reality look like? Where would your business be? How much revenue are you bringing in? What's your income personally each month in terms of what you're paying yourself profit-wise? Or are you investing all of that back into the business? Who are the people that you want to help? Who are your ideal clients that you want to help 3 to 5 years from now? And how exactly would you like to help those clients? What kind of home are you living in? What kind of car are you driving? What does your daily lifestyle look like? What does your health look like? You have to ask all these questions, and you have to ask yourself where they'll be in 3 to 5 years, because the reality is 3 to 5 years are going to pass. Okay. I mean, imagine where your podcast is going to be in 5 years if you keep going, which I believe that you will. You're going to be on fire. You're going to be full of confidence. It's going to become an automatic thing for you. You'll probably have assistants doing all of it for you, except you'll be the person behind the microphone doing the interviewing. And you're going to be with some big guests. You're going to be with some big experts in the field, because the reality is, if you keep doing what you're doing and don't stop doing it for 3 to 5 years, it's only a matter of time until you become quote unquote successful. 3 to 5 years is going to pass by. So why don't you instead of just letting that time pass by and then looking back, wishing you did this 5 years ago, ask yourself now, what will your life look like 5 years from now? That's the vision. And that's what I like to call the red dot. Okay. Your red dot, if you think of a bullseye in your mind right now. You've got the outer rings, you've got the inner rings, and then you've got the bullseye right in the center. You're going to throw a lot of darts at the dartboard. Okay. The darts are your goals. You're going to achieve goal after goal after goal. Some of them are going to be on mark. Some of them are going to bring you in a direction that you never thought you'd want to go. And those are the outer rings. But eventually, once you get better, you're going to throw more darts that get closer to the bullseye. More darts that get closer to the red dot, which is the center of that dartboard, which is your vision in 3 to 5 years. And you might get lucky at the beginning. You might shoot some darts and it might hit right in the bullseye. You might get a big guest on your 24th episode, right? You might get like a Seth Godin, or you might get one of these other big guys in marketing or sales or whatever. And you're going to keep doing that, but eventually it's going to be bullseye, 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 bullseye until you are exactly where you said you wanted to be in 3 to 5 years. So your goals are the stepping stones to bring you to that vision. So the question to ask yourself is, where do I want to be in 3 to 5 years? And what steps must I take now, starting today, in order to get to that vision? And this is the thing, Salman, you only need to know the next step ahead. You don't need to worry about the 5th dart. All you need to know is, what am I going to do next? And then you have to ask yourself, is this bringing me in the forward direction that I want to go? If it's not, you need to eliminate it. Only focus on the things that will bring you closer to your goal. Only focus on the things that we call needle movers. Because as an entrepreneur, you're likely doing a lot of the things on your own at the beginning. You're creating the content, you're making the offer, you're creating the product, you're marketing it, and then you're fulfilling it, you're delivering the service, but you're also taking in the sales and you're doing the bookkeeping. Everything is you. So it's important at the beginning, as you make these steps forward, that one, you create systems for yourself to make it easy. Like with my podcast, I have everything typed up that I'm going to send people already. I've got the welcome email. I've got the thank you for being on the show email with a link to the show. Like everything is typed up in a way where I don't have to retype it every time. I've created systems for myself. And you'll get to the point as an entrepreneur where you're now able to hire a virtual assistant who can do all these things for you, right? And that might be a year down the line, 2 years down the line. But when you're alone, and in general, even if you have a team of 500, you have to focus on the things that will move the needle for you the most, that will bring you to that long-term vision or red dot. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. I got a few more questions based on my question. Should I set my goals for 3 years or 5 years? So how long should I target? For 5 years or 10 years?
Well, you've probably heard the quote, we heavily underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years, but we overestimate what we can do in 1 year. So we think we're going to get a lot more done in 1 year than we really will, but we never really think far ahead to ask ourselves, where am I going to be in 5? The reason why I don't generally go past 5 years is because those are really dreams, right? It's hard. Like we said, if you asked yourself 10 years ago where you'd be in 10 years, you'd have no idea. You can have a direction, but the reality is, I don't believe in fate necessarily. I do believe that we create our own reality based on the actions that we put forth. However, I do believe that you can set a direction, but I don't believe that you'll be able to pinpoint exactly where you'll be in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. I never generally go past 5 years, because after 5 years, it becomes very, very mystical. The reality is, the universe or God or whatever it is that you believe is going to curate your life to an extent. You get to play your part by taking actions that can help to design that life, but I don't believe that I don't believe that I'd even be able to guess where I'd be in 10 years, because I'm going to be in a similar place to where I want to be, but there's going to be a lot in my life that I never could have expected or anticipated, if that makes sense. I mean, what do you think? Do you like to project 10 years ahead, or do you like to set shorter term goals? What are your thoughts on that?
I personally set goals based on 2 to 3 years. So
That's a good time period.
So I also plan what's my next step, and then what the next after that, what I'm going to do. I plan around 2 to 3 next steps, what I'm going to do. Yeah. So you said that you have to plan what's the next thing you want to do. I personally do what's the next 3 or 4 things I'm going to do.
That's a great plan. It's a great plan because those are your goals, right? And the thing is, sometimes you can see 5 steps ahead. Like Patrick Bet-David is an incredible entrepreneur. He's the host of Valuetainment, which is a giant entrepreneurship YouTube channel. For those who haven't checked it out, highly recommend you do. His name is Patrick Bet-David. he wrote a book called Your Next 5 Moves. And it is an incredible book. And he said, I would have named it The Next 20 Moves, but that isn't as great of a book title for the publisher as Your Next 5 Moves. So he says, look as far ahead as you can. So I completely agree with what you just said. But if you're saying to yourself, a lot of people do this, Salman. They'll create a goal of, well, I want to lose 80 pounds or I want to lose 10 pounds. And then they start to think about what it's going to take in order to get there. And because it seems so impossible to them, they give up because they don't know all of the steps that's going to bring them there. If you don't know every single step that's going to bring you to your goal, stop focusing on everything you're going to have to do. And instead, what's the next thing? You always know what the next step is going to be, even if you don't know 3 steps or 5 steps down the line. But if you know the next 5 steps, more power to you. That's incredible. But for those who don't, focus on the next step. And once you're there, ask yourself, what's the next one? What's the next one? As you go along, you're going to be a lot more confident on what your next steps are, but you simply have to get started.
Totally agree with you. So, what thing is stopping us to be more productive?
Oh man, where do I begin, brother? Oh, first of all, this right here, for those listening, I'm holding up my phone. Yeah, this is the number one thing right here. Number one thing. You're working on something with the business. Your phone goes off. You look at it. You just wasted 15 minutes of your life scrolling through Facebook like a zombie, and you didn't even realize that you were doing it. Okay. And a lot of people, Salman, they get caught in the trap of they think that because they're an entrepreneur, they think that because they're a business owner, they have to be on social media all the time. But there's 2 forms of using social media. There's creating on social media, and there's consuming. And most people are consuming at least 80% of the time. And that's generous. Usually it's like 90% of the time. They're scrolling through social media, looking at all this useless stuff that isn't helping their lives or the business. Your goal is to create more than you consume. So right now you're creating. I'm creating by even being here with you. If you're finding yourself consuming more, then you need a better creation plan. This is the number one distraction, your phone, that you'll ever face. And social media is one of the ones that branches off from it. That's the first thing that limits all people. And I mean all people. I get sucked into this at times. I've created a rule where the first 30 minutes of my day, I won't even look at my phone. I won't read the text messages. I won't open social media. I won't do any of that because I know it's going to start my day off in a bad way. It's going to start my day off in a way of not being productive. That's number one, your phone. The second thing to realize when it comes to your time and productivity, especially as an entrepreneur, is exactly what we were just talking about. A lot of people are focused on the things that won't move the needle for them in their business. When you first start as an entrepreneur, your number one goal is to create an offer and sell it. Very important. It's not to get the business cards. It's not to get the pens that have your logo on them. It is to create an offer that is going to solve a problem for a person or a group of people, and it's to sell the offer. You can't do anything as an entrepreneur if you're not bringing in revenue, if you're not selling something. So focus on the needle movers. Focus on the things that will move the needle in your business. Stop wasting time on the time sinks like social media and taking time doing the things like creating a logo or even endlessly creating content. The first thing you should be doing is create an offer and sell it. So focus on what's moving the needle and do your best to eliminate distractions and to stop doing the things that aren't moving the needle for you in your business. That's what I think is the best way to become more productive as a business owner, but as a human being in general.
Sorry for the interruption. This is a short break. Looks like you're really enjoying the episode. I have a small request. After finishing this, please leave a review on Apple Podcast. It means the world to me. And reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. You will find the contact details below. Let's continue.
What does success looks like to you?
Success to me, I used to write about success as if it was all about me. So when I was 18, 19, success to me was having a luxury sports car, which I bought and I still drive one and I highly enjoy it. I love driving it, right? Just because I like nice things. And now I can actually afford it. Back then I couldn't. Success to me used to look like trips. It used to look like all these extravagant experiences. It used to look like working on my own terms, which is still very important to me. Success used to be about me, 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 me. When I actually started to feel successful is when I started to focus on other people and not just myself. Success really happened for me once I started training new salespeople. Because once I started training these new salespeople and showing them what helped me to be successful in sales, I found what brought me purpose in my life. I found what brought me true meaning. And my recommendation to everyone listening is find that thing that when you do it, it can be in your business, it could be in your community, it could be anywhere. Find the thing that when you're doing it, it feels like this is what you were meant to be doing. Right? People are out there looking for their purpose. And really your purpose is using what is natural to you, using what your own gifts are to help other people. So when you asked me, some advice at the beginning of the podcast, that brought me joy because I got to share my own experiences with you, right? I got to share what didn't work for me so that you could accelerate your own progress. That's what happiness and success is to me now. Using what I'm good at to help other people. It's serving my clients with whether it's my one-on-one coaching or my group programs that I run or my academy, which is a year-long program. So success to me now is helping other people to be successful and helping other people figure out and determine what success even means to them. I think no matter who it is listening, your purpose and success has to do with other people. Not just yourself. Success is about others, not you. At least for me.
Interesting. Because I personally start from focusing on others.
You started focusing on others? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And how does that make you feel?
Better. Actually, good. Because I'm totally based on that. I live my life focusing on others and stuff.
Yeah. Actually, and let me tell you, brother, you can never go wrong focusing on other people. You can never go wrong. When I have people who come to me and they say, Brandon, I'm anxious about this thing coming up. I'm depressed about this. I don't know what to do next. Me is what it sounds like. I literally say, I want you to forget about that. And I want you to go out there and help someone right now. Whether it's buying a coffee for the person behind you, whether it's smiling at someone as you pass them on the running trail, whether it's having a conversation with a stranger and bringing them up and giving them positive vibes. If you're ever feeling like you're not enough, or if you're ever feeling down or sad or not successful, go out into your local community and help somebody with something. Help a homeless person, any kind of contribution, help someone. And it will be impossible for you not to feel good after you help someone. And you don't help someone just to make yourself feel good. It's just a natural byproduct of doing the right thing because you know that you're making a difference.
Yeah. So let's get to our podcast topic. So what's the roadmap looks like from why you are now to why you want to be?
I think the first question that you really have to ask yourself is, what do you want, right? So in order to go from where you are to where you want to be, what does where you want to be look like? And I think that goes back to the vision that we talked about. What does your life look like in 3 to 5 years? I think that can be your outcome, right? And that's the first thing you got to know. You'd be very surprised when I ask people, like, where do you want your podcast to be in a year? How many downloads do you want? How many episodes do you want to be at? What's the outcome of that, right? And they always say, well, I don't really know. I never thought about that. Well, you got to figure it out. You have to know. Otherwise, you're wasting time. You have to decide. You have to be intentional. You have to live on purpose. John Maxwell, who's giant leadership expert, I'm sure everyone knows John Maxwell. He wrote a book that's called Living on Purpose, right? You need to live your life on purpose. You need to decide what you want. So for number one, know your outcome. The second question I ask people is, I don't immediately help them to start getting there. The second thing I ask them is, well, why do you want that thing in your life? What's that house going to do for you? What's that car going to do for you? How are those trips going to help you? And it always ends up coming down to other people. Again, whenever I really dig into what makes someone feel good, what really lights somebody up, your why is always related to other people. So ask yourself, what is it about what I'm doing? What is it about my outcome that's going to do good for other people? Why is this so important to me? If your why is strong enough, then you can figure out any how. But you need to know why. And you really need to ask yourself, why do I want this? And I recommend asking yourself why 7 times. So why do I want a nice house? Well, I'll have a lot of room to live. Well, why do I want a lot of room to live in? Well, I want to have a family of 3 kids and a wife or a husband or whatever. Okay, cool. Why do you want that? Well, I've always wanted a big family. Okay, well, why do you want a big family? Keep asking yourself why. Well, I want a community who I love more than anything, a community I can really sacrifice myself for. Well, why do you want that? Well, I really just want more of the feeling of love in my life. So we just took an outcome of I want a nice home, a beautiful home, and we just found out that the real reason you want that is love, right? So you have to break down your why. Why do you want the thing that you want? And only after you know what you want and why you want it, can you start going from here to where it is that you want to be. And the next step is action. And this is where a lot of people stop. A lot of people have an idea of what they want. If you ask them, well, what are your goals? 40% will have an idea and they'll say, well, I want this. I want to make more money. I want to start a company. I want to start a business. But most people don't take enough consistent action to go where they want to be. A lot of people will start and then they'll stop. I think the average number of podcast episodes that someone will do is 18 podcasts and they'll stop. And it's like, well, why'd you stop? And they said, well, I didn't have many people listening. And it's like, well, yeah, no one knows you exist yet, right? Well, Brandon, people aren't buying my product. Well, dude, how many people have you talked to? Oh, like 4 people. Yeah, you've got to talk to like 400.
Yeah.
And then you've got to talk to 400 to sell one. And then after you sell one, you have to treat that person like gold and ask them, what do you think about the product? Can I use you as a testimonial? How can I make this better for you? Right? Everything starts off slow. Everything starts off not getting the result that you want, and you're going to fail and you're going to mess up and you're going to run into obstacles and people are going to hate on you and your family is going to say, why the hell are you doing this? Brandon, why are you doing this podcast? It's not making you any money yet. Why are you doing this YouTube channel? Why are you starting this business? And you have to keep going. You remember what I said when I said, if you are doing this after 3 years, I can guarantee you that you're going to have some very big names on your show because you kept going. And most people don't. You have to keep taking action. And this is why your why is so important. Your reason why is important because after you do this for a year and you haven't seen the result that you want, you still have to keep going. And you have to notice what works. Notice what works. Like, I remember the first product I launched. I launched a boot camp that was an in-person boot camp. And I didn't sell any. I didn't sell one ticket. And then I made it free. And I got 8 people in the room. Okay. And I said, okay, well, this is cool, but I'm not making any money. So I launched my first product, which is a goal setting course that I still sell to this day. And people started to buy it. And it started to build the belief in myself of, oh my God, people will actually buy what I create. People actually want to know how I went from where I was at 21 years old to where I am now at 27, going from 60 pounds heavier to thousands of dollars of credit card debt to now operating and owning my own business that's helping people. People wanted that. So they started buying it. So then I asked, well, what can I do now? So I created my next product and more people started to buy that. And it started to help more people. And then I created a YouTube channel so that I could reach more people. And then I created a podcast so that I could network with other experts. Because that's another thing about podcasts. It's not just about the content that people bring. It's about the opportunity to network with people. Like after this, I expect to talk with you frequently, Salman, not like every day, but I would love to check in with you every month to hear how you're doing, because it's about the people that you meet along the way. But the big thing, man, and the direction I'm going with this is after you know what you want and you know why you want it, you have to keep going. Most businesses fail after a year, not because they had a failing product, but because they simply gave up. The only time you fail is when you stop. You have to keep going.
So first we have to find our why we are doing it, then what we're doing, and try, and next be consistent. Take actions. Yeah.
It sounds simple, doesn't it? Because it is. It's easy. But the process isn't. And that's why you have to know your why. Because when it gets difficult, your why is what pulls you through.
And it gets difficult every day. So,
yeah.
How to find our why? The purpose.
You know, it goes back to what we said about your why generally has to do with other people. So if you want to figure out, and I think this is great for all entrepreneurs listening, how can you help other people? Like, in what way do you want to help other people? And some people are like, well, I'm not really sure. Well, ask yourself, what's your story? What helped you overcome challenges in your own life? You know, usually as an entrepreneur, we're helping people who are just a few years behind us.
Yeah.
So if you're a business coach and you have a successful business, why not help other people who are trying to start their own business? Right. And there's a lot of freaking business coaches out there, right? Most of them who haven't really accomplished anything, but some have. Like my coach, when I got a personal coach, that's when my business exploded, because I actually found someone who knew what they were doing. I found someone who actually built a business and I paid them to help me. And when you can condense 10 years into 5 months, find someone who's been doing this for 10 years, have them show you everything they did, you can get the same result after 5 months. So ask yourself, what is the difference that you want to make in the world? Like, what impact do you want to make? Like, what's your reason? Let me ask you, what is your reason for hosting this show? How do you want to help people?
Basically, now one kind of to share the knowledge, actually,
share the knowledge.
You can say it's the target
and
audience.
Why
is
are
also,
you passionate about sharing that?
Let me describe it. Another way you can say the target audience is me. Some people's like me.
Yeah.
I'm in new with business. I'm in my early 20s. So recently, it's been around a year. I started my business. I didn't start, actually. I joined the business. So a lot of things I don't know. So by interviewing people, I have a lot of questions I can ask you as a podcast from you. I have a lot of podcast related question in mind. Based on our conversation, I've got a lot of podcast related questions. I'm gonna ask in the end. I planned. So
awesome.
So basically that's it. So learn from it. And I'm learning it through this podcasting, and I'm sharing this knowledge with others.
And you know what? I think what you're doing is awesome.
Yeah.
And I would recommend you never even, like, I think it's important to have a nice, clear and concise podcast episode, but never trim out those parts where you're thinking of what to ask. Right? Never trim out the parts like what you just said. I'm looking to continue to get better at this. People, when they're editing that, they might say, oh, I don't want people to hear that I'm still learning this thing too. But people will connect more with you because you are still learning, and they'll relate to that. And they'll say, oh my God, I'm exactly where Salman is right now. And you know what? They're just a few steps behind. Those are the people who are saying, do I have what it takes to be a podcast host? Do I even have what it takes to be on a show in general? Like with someone like you, Salman, one of the first things I would do if I was working with you as my client is we'd figure out exactly where you wanted to go. We'd figure out exactly what you wanted your life to look like 3 to 5 years from now. We'd break it down into the step-by-step goals like we talked about. And then I would really dig in and I would ask you, what are your unique abilities? What are your strengths? How can you really show up and serve people? What are the 3 to 5 things that you do that bring you the most results in your business? And we would dig into those and we would do anything necessary in order for you to use those to create revenue for your business so that you can get to that future vision of yourself and that future lifestyle. So I am down to answer any questions you have with the podcast. And I think that that's very powerful too, because I'm asking questions every single day, man, whether it's typing it into Google or asking my personal coach. I'm constantly asking questions. So to answer your original question, ask yourself, what am I good at? And what do I love to help people with? That's your why. That's how you find out. And you'll find out if that's your real why, because you're going to go out there and do it and you're going to try different things. And once you find the thing that lights your fire, the thing that when you leave the interaction, you're like, oh my God, that was the most fun I've had in a long time. That's how you know that you found the thing that you were meant to do.
Absolutely.
Sorry for the interruption. This is a short break. Looks like you're really enjoying the episode. I have a small request. After finishing this, please leave a review on Apple Podcast. It means the world to me. And reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. You will find the contact details below. Let's continue.
Let's talk a little bit about podcast.
Okay.
So, on your conversation, what was your starting downloads when you started?
And it's going to be like one. You're going to get like one download. And this is the thing about a lot of people look for these vanity metrics, especially you. How old are you?
21.
Okay. So you're 6 years younger than me, which means that you grew up more with this technology than I did. I grew up with it, but you grew up with it more. And in the minds of a lot of people watching, they are so focused on these vanity metrics. But let me tell you this, one of my YouTube videos might get 30 or 40 views, but I get more clients and I'm able to help more people with those 30 views than somebody who's getting 5,000 to 10,000 views on their videos. And the reason being, it's not about the number of people who watch it. It's about the quality of the person who's watching it. Because if you have 10,000 downloads, but you're reaching the wrong audience, that isn't any better than if you had 10 downloads of the right audience. Because the reason you do a podcast is to reach people, but it's also to bring in more potential leads,
Sure.
to bring in more potential
Absolutely.
clients, and they have to be quality clients. You have to reach the right people. So because you're going after quality and not quantity, you're going to have low downloads for a long time. It'll take you 6 months before you even get 1,000 total downloads. But you know what? Out of those 1,000 downloads, you'll have found 5 to 10 clients if you did it right, if they were quality downloads. You see, a lot of people are asking the question of how do I get more engagement? How do I get more likes? How do I get more views? The real question should be, how can I get a higher quality of view? How can I get higher quality leads? It might be marketing your podcast to a different platform. It might be having different guests and different experts on your show. It might be putting a different title on your podcast. A lot of people, let me give you a piece of advice. 90% of people, they will release this podcast and the title of the podcast will be episode number 18, my interview with Brandon Eastman. No one is going to watch that.
Yeah.
Because most people won't know who I am. They won't know who you are. and they don't care what number the episode it is. So why would they click? You have to title your episode in a way where people are actively searching for that episode. So a name for this episode might be how to create a vision as an entrepreneur, or how to set goals as an entrepreneur, or how to figure out your next move as an entrepreneur. And you'll title it that way because that is something that an entrepreneur would actually type in.
Absolutely.
And you write in the title entrepreneur because that's the person who you're looking to reach. And would someone be more interested in clicking that than clicking the one that says episode number 18, interview with Brandon Eastman? No one cares about that. So it's about getting a high quality of viewer, and it's about titling your content in a way where people will actually find you.
Absolutely. It was interesting because I have released my first episode actually yesterday or maybe a day after.
Congratulations.
So I have released 5 episodes. So far, last time I checked the stats, it was at maybe 23 downloads. Probably 24
That's
hours.
Awesome, dude. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And you know, for me, like when I launched my first videos, most of the views were my family and friends because they wanted to support me. And that's awesome. But I think the biggest thing, man, is to provide a ton of value to help people. You really just got to help people, and you've got to do it because you want to help them. And then you have to tell them how they can help you. Very important that everyone listening right now, if you found any value from this episode, please share it with one person, share it with a friend, because your entrepreneur audience who's listening, they're going to share it with an entrepreneur friend of theirs. And then they're going to share it, and they're going to share it, and they're going to share it. And it goes from 24 downloads to 50 to 80 to 1,000 to 10,000. And if you do it the right way, you're going to have 10,000 of the right people rather than 100,000 of the people who really aren't meant to be listening to the podcast in the first place. So congrats on you starting your podcast. Congrats on you reaching out to me to even get me on here, because that's awesome. You're doing the outreach, you're doing the work. And congratulations on already having some success with it. That's huge.
Thanks. So I faced a problem that titling the podcast actually. So how can I title the podcast better way? So that's giving me a lot of trouble. So it's like, it happens that I talk a vast, very different of topics in a podcast. Sometimes it happens. We are talking, for example, we have, that happens. So how can we create a good title for episodes?
That's an awesome question. Awesome question. So the key premise comes down to, you have to name it for what people are already searching. Okay. So before I even do an episode, I already know what I'm going to title the episode based on the subject matter of my expert. So if I'm going to be talking to an expert on lead generation, right? Or if I'm talking to a YouTube expert, because a lot of business, everyone should be on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, you got to get on it right now. Okay. It's just too important. You have to get on YouTube, and you got to be on. It depends who you're targeting, right? So I would go to YouTube and I would type in entrepreneurship, and I would see what pops up, see what people are typing in. But there's a website, a free website that I started to use when I created my YouTube channel. It's still around. I just showed someone this yesterday. It's called answerthepublic.com. Nice. And you'll type in entrepreneur, right? And it's going to pull up like a tree that shows you who, what, when, where, and why, right? So one of the questions might be, how do I start as an entrepreneur? How can I get customers as an entrepreneur? How do I create an offer? How do I sell my product? How do I get attention? How do I create content? All these things. And then you find experts, and then you title the episode, and then you guide the conversation in the way that you guided the conversation here. So I would have already known that the name of this episode would be how to create a vision as an entrepreneur. And then I would be asking my expert all about vision, goal setting, next steps ahead, how to achieve it, things like that. Because then YouTube or the podcast engine is going to listen to your episode using artificial intelligence And it's going to say, okay, well, they said vision 80 times in this episode. It must really be about vision and entrepreneurship. So we're going to push this out to as many entrepreneurs and as many people looking into goals as possible. So your intentionality on titling an episode is quite possibly one of the most important parts of the entire episode is the title. You got to title things the right way so you can reach the right people.
I also use another trick that what is the high keyword search terms? So I asked those questions in a podcast and then I added on the YouTube so set the time and the question. So that helped me a lot recently. I use that trick.
Yeah.
So what mistakes have you done so far?
Oh my God. Where do I begin, man? Mistakes in what area specifically? Because I could name a lot.
Let's focus on your business. What mistakes have you made on your business?
Focusing too much on the fluff versus focusing on actually acquiring and helping customers. So I put a lot of focus for the first year of my business into writing a book, into creating free content, which is important. I put it into creating a very nice logo. I put it into creating a very, very polished and beautiful website. When the first thing that if I could go back and start this whole, because I'm in the business of coaching, consulting, and course creation. Okay, that's my business. It's knowledge products. I don't really sell physical products other than my book, which I do sell as a physical product. It's on Amazon. What I would have done is I would have focused on finding a person I can help, helping them achieve their goal, and then getting a testimonial from them and helping them at the highest level possible. I recommend to anyone out there who wants to start a business or be an entrepreneur or who's already doing it, you need to find clients and you need to bring in money. Sales is the lifeblood of your business. And a lot of entrepreneurs aren't talking about this. They're talking about content, which is very important, but that's to build your brand. That's the marketing. You have to have a product to sell in the first place. And the only way you're going to have a product you can sell in the first place is if you have a product that actually helps people. And the only way you're going to know if that product helps people is to help people and see if it actually works. So all of my programs were created because it helped somebody and it worked. So help somebody for free, which is people are so afraid of doing that. People are so afraid of helping someone for free and collecting a testimonial because they're like, well, I can't afford to help someone for free. Well, if you can't help someone for free, then how the hell are you going to find someone to pay you for it? Because the person that you're looking to get money from, the person you're looking to bring on as a paying client is going to ask you, who else have you helped and how have you helped them? The most valuable page on my website, Salman, is my testimonial page. Because without testimonials, it's going to be difficult to get people to work with you unless they really know you, like you, and trust you. The only way to get people to trust you is to show them that you've helped other people who are just like them. So start helping people now, collect the testimonial from them, and look to get people results and solve their problem. That would have saved me over a year of wasting time. And I had to figure it out on my own. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. So another question would be, what mistakes have you done as in podcasting?
In podcasting. Let me think about that for a second. You know, it's hard to say because I feel like podcasting is very similar to my YouTube journey. And I made a lot more mistakes on YouTube than I have in podcasting because by the time I created a podcast, I already had a business that was growing. But what I think a lot of people will make the mistake of with podcasting is not posting it everywhere is the first mistake. This one episode here can be a video on YouTube.
Yeah.
It can be a podcast on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Slack, every podcast platform. You should take it and you should make clips from it for every other platform. This one episode can create 20 or more pieces of content.
20 plus.
You don't even need to create 20 videos. Just make one good video, one great podcast, and you could post an episode just off every question that you asked me. It's using one piece of content in many different ways. It's titling the content the right way so people actually find it. And really, it's creating as cohesive of an experience as possible for the listener, right? And you can do that through editing. But I think the biggest way, the reason why my podcast has been successful is because before I have the guest on, like I had a guest this morning. Okay. I talked to a guest named Sharon Valenti this morning. And for those watching, this was my page of notes for before I even talked to her. These were the questions I wrote down. So I knew exactly what I wanted to ask her. And I didn't even ask her all these questions. But I had an idea of what I wanted to ask. I knew the content. I knew the reason why I was talking to her. But I asked her different questions based on the answers that she gave me to the first two questions. So this applies to every area of life, not just podcasting or entrepreneurship. Be prepared. You don't need to know I do interview people who I've never even looked up their website because I know their subject matter and I come prepared to the conversation with topics that are related to that subject. That way, I don't seem like a complete newbie. That way I can have an actual conversation and not, like we talked about, not just have it be question. It's a conversation. And by the end of it, they're always like, oh, wow, this was a great experience. You're one of the best hosts I've ever worked with. It's not because I'm someone special. It's because I came prepared to the conversation. So preparation is key, man. Preparation is so important.
Yeah. So you said in the first thing, about the distribution, to post it everywhere, make 20 content. This is exactly what I'm doing.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome.
Okay. So we are almost at the end. I basically planned to make the podcast in around 30 to 35 minutes. I planned it, but it was
I've got
a great
2 minutes, just so you know. It is a great conversation.
Yeah. So we are almost at and so where can our listeners find you?
You can find me. So there's several places you can find me. You can find me on all social platforms, Instagram, Facebook. The place where I release most of my content is on YouTube. So search Brandon Eastman on YouTube. You'll find all my content there. It's the guy in the blue hoodie with the BE on the hoodie, and I'm the bald guy. So it's not many people you can watch with my name. So Brandon Eastman on YouTube. You can also find me on all the podcast platforms. You can type in Brandon Eastman or the Be Better Broadcast. But if you want to have a conversation with me, my target audience is mainly on LinkedIn. It's solopreneurs. It's salespeople inside of companies. Search my name on LinkedIn, Brandon Eastman, connect with me and send me a note. I'd love to have a conversation with you to talk about what your goals are and what you're looking to achieve.
So any last words for our listeners?
Just start. Whatever you're thinking of starting, just freaking begin, make mistakes, be uncomfortable, and keep going. Just try so many different things and keep going. See what works. Really, the biggest fault in new entrepreneurs today is they're thinking about them. You have to think about the other person, and you have to just keep going one step at a time. You always know what your next step is, and seek to improve 1% each day. If you do that, then you've got the recipe for successful business and for really success in life.
So that was awesome. So let's end it here.
Awesome. It was a great conversation, brother.
Absolutely. I can talk for an hour.
Me too. Believe me.
Yeah. So let's end it.
Okay. This is Brandon Eastman, and you are listening to the Salman Farsi Experience.
Thanks for joining us today. Hit the subscribe button, and if you are listening this on Apple Podcast, please leave a review. This will really help us to make our future episodes better. Have a question in mind? Go to salmanfarsi.co/ask and submit your question. We see every submission and we might answer it in the next episode. Thanks again for listening. We will see you on Tuesday and Thursday. Have a great week.